Once, Rome was the heart of a world-spanning empire, a city of marble, law, and unmatched ambition. But by the 5th century AD, that mighty heart was faltering. The streets that had once echoed with triumphal marches were now crowded with beggars, soldiers without pay, and desperate citizens. Grand temples stood abandoned, their statues eroded not just by time but by neglect. In the Senate, once the proud seat of Roman reason and debate, now sat aging aristocrats too focused on personal power to save the state. Tax collectors squeezed the poor, while the rich retreated to fortified villas, far from the collapsing frontiers. The empire was no longer united, it was a patchwork of corrupt officials, rival generals, and forgotten promises. And as the sun set on the eternal city, the danger no longer came from outside. It was within the walls. Beyond the borders, across the rivers of the north, came tribes once dismissed as savages now. The future rulers of Rome, the Visigoths, led by Alaric, had already sacked the city decades earlier. Vandals swept across North Africa. The Huns, terrifying horsemen from the east, thundered into Europe under the fierce Attila. These were not just invaders, they were refugees, warriors, settlers. They came with families, with weapons, and with nothing to lose. Rome could no longer stop them. Its armies were stretched thin. Mercenaries, many of them Germanic themselves, fought for pay, not for Rome. Border after border fell. Cities burned, roads became dangerous, grain shipments ceased. And with every new wave, the empire lost something it could never recover: its fearsome reputation. In the year 476 AD, the final blow came not with a grand battle, but with a quiet coup. A Germanic general named Odoacer led an army of disgruntled soldiers, men who no longer felt loyalty to a fading empire. In the capital, a boy sat upon the throne, Romulus Augustulus. Barely a teenager, he was crowned not by right, but by convenience, a puppet, a placeholder. Odoacer marched into Ravenna, the imperial residence. There was no bloodshed, no grand resistance. He simply removed the crown from the boy's head. And then he did something unexpected. He sent the imperial regalia, the crown, the robes, the scepter eastward to the emperor in Constantinople. The message was clear: there is no longer a Western Roman Empire. And so, an empire that had lasted for over 500 years ended without a bang. But did it truly die? Or did it transform? The roads the Romans built were still walked upon. Their laws still formed the basis of European justice. Their language, Latin, evolved into Italian, French, Spanish, and more. Their architecture was copied. Their religion, Christianity, reshaped the continent. Even in death, Rome lived on not as an empire of land, but as an empire of ideas. From the ruins of its fall, the medieval world would rise. And centuries later, artists, scientists, generals, and dreamers would all look back and ask, what was Rome? And can we ever build something like it again?